Hello and welcome to On the Menu, Nutrition and Parkinson's. My name is Erin McGee, and I'm Community Program Manager for the Parkinson's Foundation, Minnesota and Dakota's chapters. Today's program is being hosted by the following Parkinson's Foundation chapters. We would like to thank our sponsors, Acadia Pharmaceuticals, Accorda Therapeutics, Amneal, Adamas, Lundbeck, and Supernus Pharmaceuticals, formerly known as US World Meds, for supporting today's program. We'd also like to thank our silver level sponsor, Kiowa Kirin, for supporting today's program. The mission of the Parkinson's Foundation is to make lives better for people living with Parkinson's disease by improving care and advancing research today until there's a tomorrow without the disease. In everything we do, we build on the energy, experience, and the passion of the global Parkinson's community. The Parkinson's Foundation hosts virtual events each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. To learn more and to register, please visit parkinson.org/pdhealth. You can visit this page to view archived PD Health at Home programs. We have a great program lined up today, so let's get started. I'm pleased to introduce Beth Kitzis, a registered dietitian at Community Servings in Jamaica Plain, Massachusetts. Community Servings provides medically tailored meals to clients with chronic and critical illnesses across Massachusetts. She will be leading us in a cooking demonstration of couscous salad, sharing healthy eating tips and kitchen gadgets that could be helpful for all. Thanks, Beth, for joining us today.
Thanks, Erin. I'm really happy to be here with you all today. So I'm going to kind of follow up on a lot of what Dr. Mishley said yesterday. She talked a lot about the research and the science of, what we're looking at in terms of the best nutrition possible for Parkinson's patients. And I'm going to talk about the little bit more practical side of it, sort of how can you implement those changes. So today we're going to be making this beautiful summer couscous salad. And I believe that the recipe will be emailed out to people, so when you see it, don't panic. This salad has a million ingredients in it and they're all optional. So it's kind of like a basic salad that you could just put together and keep it in your fridge for several days and just keep either adding things to it or making decisions about what you don't want in it. So it's really customizable. But what I really like about this is that, one, it's cold. So for those of us who are experiencing some serious heat right now, it's really nice that you can store in your refrigerator. It keeps for a lot of days, and it's going to hit a lot of the highlights of what Dr. Mishley and I are talking about in terms of Parkinson's nutrition. The other thing I like about this is that you don't have to turn on a stove. So I'm going to get us started, and as I introduce each ingredient, I'm going to talk about how it relates to what Dr. Mishley talked about in terms of malnutrition, hydration, constipation, some inflammation a little bit, and just kind of how these fit into a generally healthy diet. So we're going to start with some whole grain couscous. So couscous is really just tiny bits of pasta, and so I'm using the whole wheat version of that. So if you don't eat wheat, you could make this salad with a different grain. So this would also work really well with quinoa, which you would have to cook, but it would work really well just the same and add even a touch more protein. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to angle my camera down a little bit so you can see better. So I apologize for the moving around. I'm sort of operating my own camera work. But what I'm going to do is just put the couscous into my bowl. And then what I have is a cup and a half of some chicken broth. So I heated this up in the microwave, so it doesn't have to be boiling hot, but just hot enough that if I touch it, I don't want to hold my hand here for too long. And I'm just going to pour it over it. So you can use veggie broth, you can use chicken broth, you can even use water if you don't want to use broth at all. And so I'm just going to cover that up, and it just needs like 5 minutes or so to just sit there. And it's going to soak in, because the pieces of the pasta are so tiny, it's going to soak in all the liquid and be fully cooked. And so while that's doing that, I'm going to move it out of the way, and I'm going to move on to all my other ingredients. So I'm sure you've heard the expression to eat the rainbow. And so I tried to make a little beautiful rainbow there for you. Look at all those colors. And so not only is the salad going to be really healthy with lots of different colors and ingredients and nutrients, but it's going to be really pretty. So next, we're going to start doing some chopping. So I have a cucumber, and the reason that this is so helpful in this kind of salad is that cucumbers are full of water. So Dr. Mishley talked a little bit yesterday about how dehydration is a big part of the malnutrition that we tend to see a lot in Parkinson's patients. And some of that has to do with just not generally being thirsty. Also, a lot of times I hear patients tell me they don't want to drink a lot because they don't want to get up to go to the bathroom so many times. So it's more of a conscious deterrent. So one of the ways, though, that we can combat some of the lack of thirst and just add to some of the hydration, especially during these hot months, is to eat our water. So cucumbers are full of water, as are most fruits and vegetables too, but cucumbers particularly are watery. So this is going to be great. It's going to add some crunch to the salad, a little bit of fiber, some vitamins as well. So I'm going to start chopping on my ingredients, and then also start adding them into the couscous as we go. So I've just got one cucumber, and I'll angle down in one sec just to. Okay, so we're gonna just chop our cucumber. And this cucumber is really big, so I'm probably not gonna use the whole thing. But go ahead and use a whole big cucumber if you have one. I know people are coming up with cucumbers from their gardens right now. So this is a great way to use those up. You know, there's only so many things you can do with cucumbers, although actually our chef at Community Servings the other day made a cake out of cucumbers, which I thought it's going to be really bizarre, but actually it was just kind of like a zucchini bread, and it was pretty good. So just a little sidetrack, FYI. All right, so I'm just chopping up my cucumbers. My knife is a little dull, so that's one of the problems with cooking from home. I don't have all my good industrial and high fancy equipment that I have at Community Serving. So I'm just going to chop up this cucumber. And then the next ingredient that we're going to add is going to be some frozen corn. So corn honestly doesn't have a huge amount of nutrition to it, but it does have fiber, and it adds a nice crunch and some sweetness to the salad. We're also going to use some dried cherries, and you don't have to use these at all, especially if you're trying to watch your carbs or your sugar. These are no sugar added cherries, so you know they don't have extra sugar in them, and they will add some fiber as well. But you can leave them out if you don't like them. But these are mostly just for color and for sweetness. And then I'm also going to add a bit of some red onion. And people don't usually think about onions as having a lot of nutrition, but they do. So all fruits and vegetables have something called phytonutrients, and they're basically like little magical like nutrients that we don't talk about so much. And some of them you may have heard of, like quercetin, which is, I know, really a hot thing about in people trying to avoid inflammation, or things like beta carotene is another one of these. So onions are full of these little phytonutrients, and it depends on what color onion. We're using a red onion here, mostly for color. So, you know, don't discount the nutritional value of an onion. So I'm just going to chop that up. Okay, so by now my couscous should be all set. Pull that back, and we'll start adding some ingredients. Okay, yeah, that looks great. So I'll tilt my camera again so you can see. So you can see the couscous is pretty much just cooked now. And so what I'm going to just do is stir it around with my fork to get it nice and fluffed up. Okay. So to this, I'm going to add one of our nutrition powerhouses. So I have some low sodium chickpeas. So beans, pretty much, you know, every nutritionist is going to tell you that beans are one of their favorite things to recommend. And that is because they are full of fiber. So fiber not only keeps us full and keeps things moving through our digestive system, but it has a lot of other benefits too. It can help with our cholesterol. There's a lot of research that says that fiber can prevent certain types of cancer, particularly digestive cancers. And beans are also full of protein, but as Dr. Mishley mentioned yesterday, vegetable-based protein is a lot better absorbed. So instead of chicken or beef or fish sitting in our stomachs for a long time, this kind of vegetable-based protein gets digested and absorbed much better. So especially for those of you who are dealing with some malnutrition or possibly some weight loss, getting in some more vegetable-based protein, especially if you're trying to space it out from taking your levodopa or you know, the other medications that need to be separated from protein, this is a great choice because it will get digested more quickly and help with that constipation. So I'm just going to add in the chickpeas. You want to rinse them and drain them, and if you can find low sodium versions, that's even better. So I'm going to mix that in, and then I'm going to add my cherries. Let me angle down again so you can see. And then this is just a cup of frozen corn that I've let thaw out for a little while. It's still pretty cold. It's been sitting out for like an hour or so. You could just put it in your refrigerator. You could, and like I said, you can just leave it out. But I really love how pretty it looks in here and how it does add like a nice little sweetness to it. And of course, it does add some more fiber. So it's not without any nutritional value. All right, so we'll add our cucumber in. So the water we're going to eat. And then we'll also add in half of the chopped red, or a half of a chopped red onion. Okay, so this is pretty basic so far. And we're going to add some more ingredients that are going to make it more exciting. So we're going to add in some nectarines. So fruit is always a really great thing to add to salads. Again, it's going to add some brightness, some sweetness, but one of the other things about this fruit and some of the other ingredients I'm going to add is that it has a lot of flavor too. So sometimes if you're constantly eating the same salads over and over again, you get a little bored. It's hard to want to eat a lot of it. So adding something a little unusual to your ingredient list can sort of entice you to want to eat more. So I'm just going to chop these guys up. And of course, fruit has lots of fiber too, so I'll probably say fiber 800 times today. But as you learned yesterday with Dr. Mishley, that you know, most people don't really get enough fiber. So the recommendation is to aim for 25 to 30 grams of fiber. But what we know is that most people really only get somewhere in around 12 grams. So even if you think you do eat a lot of fiber, and Dr. Mishley also mentioned this yesterday, spend some time tracking it. You know, you can even download one of those food tracking apps. So there's one called MyFitnessPal. Noom has one too. There's another one called Spark People. So there's all kinds of apps. And all you have to do is for maybe like a week or so, just add in everything that you eat during the day and see how much fiber you get. Because most of us think we're getting enough fiber, but the reality is we're probably not. So unless you're someone that eats, you know, beans every single day and nuts and seeds and all kinds of vegetarian-based foods, it's very unlikely that you're getting enough fiber. And it adds up too. So one day of a high fiber isn't gonna like solve the constipation situation. It really takes some time. So, okay, so these are kind of big. So I'm just gonna add these nectarines in. Okay. Get those in. Okay, and the one thing about this type of fruit is that it will brown. So if you feel like you're gonna have this salad around for more than like 2 or 3 days, you might wanna hold it out until you're ready to eat it. And then that way you won't have to worry about like brown fruit. So this is gonna make a huge, huge, huge salad. So also, if you live alone or you don't think you'll be able to get through all this food, this recipe, of course, can be made in a quarter of the quantity or even half the quantity. And what I also love about recipes like this, excuse me, is that you can leave things out if you don't have them, or, you know, just substitute something. So you don't like nectarines, you could use a different fruit. You could use some grapes or strawberries. Okay, so now I have our friend, the avocado. So not only does avocado make everything taste delicious, it has some protein and again is loaded with fiber, but it's also loaded with healthy fats. So having a little trouble getting that pit out. So one of the things that we recommend for everyone, and is equally important for anyone living with Parkinson's disease, is to make sure you're getting healthy fats. So Dr. Mishley yesterday talked about eating fish, because that fish is full of omega-3 fatty acids, and I definitely recommend that people try to get in at least 1 or 2 servings of fish. But other foods have lots of what we call poly and monounsaturated fats, and these are also really good for anti-inflammatory benefits and helping protect us from heart disease, and of course they taste delicious. So if you didn't see what I did, I cut it in half and pulled the seed out, and then I just kind of scored it a little with my knife. You never want to do that with your hand underneath that, because if your knife is really big, you will spend the afternoon in the emergency room. So just make sure you do that on a cutting board or on a counter and not holding it in your hand. So then with the scored pieces, I'm just going to add them all in. So this says to do 1 avocado. If you really like avocado and you're leaving another ingredient out, like the fruit out, you could probably use 2 and it would be great. Okay, and then the other ingredient that we're using that's full of healthy fats and also has a little extra protein and fiber are some sunflower seeds. So I'm going to use these unsalted. They're already roasted. You could use a different crunchy item, so you could use some nuts, pumpkin seeds, anything that has a little bit of crunch. So I'm going to add about a ½ cup of the sunflower seeds in. So measure those out, but you don't have to measure them. You know, just eyeball it to how much you like. And so it's going to add a nice little nutty, earthy flavor. Okay. And we're going to add some arugula. So, you know, our dark leafy greens are also full of those phytonutrients that I talked about, but also full of vitamin A and vitamin C, fiber, and also just really help sort of round out the salad so that it has some really light flavor to it. So arugula is a little peppery, and you just want to maybe do like 2 big handfuls. This is another ingredient that if you're going to have the salad last for several days, you might want to just add it in as you're serving each individual serving, because it will get a little wilty. So we'll add that in. And like I said, this salad does have a lot of ingredients to it, but because I'm not cooking anything, it's still really easy to prepare. And a lot of the things are things that people tend to have on hand, or at least some substitute of it. So, you know, if you don't have a cucumber, use a tomato. If you don't have a nectarine, use, I don't know, something else slightly sweet, something like grapes, or even an apple would be great in here too. Okay, and then our last ingredient before we make the dressing are some herbs. And the reason I like to add herbs to salads is because they're full of really strong, nice flavor. So if you were in my kitchen right now, you would smell basil and mint. I think Zoom needs to come up with some way for us to be able to smell things through the computer, because teaching cooking lessons on camera without being able to smell is really kind of a bummer. So I'm adding these because they really do have a lot of flavor, and when food has a lot of flavor, it tends to be more interesting and makes you want to eat it more. So what I'm going to do is just kind of pile these all up in a ball and then just run my knife through them. So this is something, if you have some mobility or, you know, some problems with keeping hands still, it's probably something you want to either have someone else do it for you, or use some sort of way to help you. So if you have a spice grinder or a food processor, a small food processor, that's a great way to chop really any of these ingredients, but especially the herbs. So I'm just going to run my knife through them. And another thing you can also use is sometimes we use these in our office, and we a lot of times actually use them with kids too, is a chopper. It's pretty inexpensive. You can get one on Amazon. And you just put your ingredients in the bottom there and then just push up and down. So it's a great way. Some of them are dishwasher safe too, so you can chop herbs like that. All right, so I'm just gonna, oh, it smells so good in here. So I'm gonna put all my herbs in, and then I'm gonna make a really, really simple dressing. So my dressing is just gonna be our friend Mr. Olive Oil, which of course, again, has healthy unsaturated fats. And then just a touch of honey for some sweetness. Again, if you're really watching how much sugar you eat, you can just leave it out. And then again, for flavor, we're gonna add some lemon juice, so it's gonna add some brightness and some acidity and just lots of punch to the salad. So I'm gonna take my bowl here. You can make the dressing straight into the salad, or you can do it on the side. So I am not gonna measure these out too carefully, but about a tablespoon of honey. And then the juice of 1 lemon. Oh man, I need to sharpen these knives. All right, so one way to squeeze a lemon without getting seeds in your food is to squeeze it cut side up. So don't do this if you have lots of cuts in your hand, because you will be screaming. But that way all the seeds stay in the lemon and don't go into my dressing. The other half. And then finally, we're going to add a couple tablespoons, I need a towel, a couple tablespoons of olive oil. So just going to eyeball it, like 1, 2, that ought to do it. So one of the last things I want to talk about as I'm getting the dressing on this salad is just sort of some, practical tips for making things work. So I talked about tracking your fiber. You can track pretty much any nutrient using MyFitnessPal, but tracking fiber. You can also track your water. So Dr. Mishley talked about having a water reminder, but you also can get like a water bottle that you have to get through 2 or 3 times, and you have like a rubber band on it that tells you, for each time every time you drink one, you pull a rubber band off. By the end of the day, you have to have no rubber bands left on that water bottle, or else you didn't drink it all. So that's another tip. Another thing is to, to really try to make some of these things work is to make a huge amount of vegetables available to you. So I have another dietitian friend who at the start of every single week, she roasts up like 2 full sheet pans of vegetables, and then she just puts them in her refrigerator. So every time she eats a meal, she puts about 2 spoonfuls of her vegetables onto her plate. So she knows that if she gets through all those vegetables, she's eaten 2 full sheet pans worth of vegetables, which sounds like a lot at the beginning of the week, but really when we look at the data, we know that, the more the better. So that's one way to think about it. I think thinking about servings of vegetables each day is a little daunting, but if we know I want to get vegetables in at every meal and I need to make that convenient for myself, then setting myself up for success like that by roasting up those vegetables in the beginning of the week, that's a great way to do that. Or just make sure that you're planning some meals that are completely plant-based, because when you do that, you're more likely to get, lots of vegetables in. If we're centering our meals around a protein, there we go. We have our whole big salad. I wish everyone could taste it. When we're planning meals around a protein, the vegetables tend to be kind of an afterthought, or, maybe I'll have a salad, but it's really kind of just to go with the meal. But if you're making plant-based meals, and there are hundreds and hundreds of web-based resources to find plant-based meals or vegetarian meals, try some out. Try a bean-based meal. Try one of the meat alternatives, so tofu or soy, a soy-based thing, and really try to make the vegetables the main part of the meal. So if you do that once or twice a week, you'll really start to find that you're eating more vegetables and possibly eating a little bit less meat. So that's another tip to try. I'm happy to answer questions at the end of this too, if you are looking for more practical advice, but I think that takes me to the end of my presentation. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll try to make it at some point.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Beth, for sharing the recipe, walking through the steps, and giving the benefits of each ingredient. I really want to emphasize you don't have to put all the things in there.
I know.
The accessibility with it, that you can really substitute what you're interested in and what you have available. I have a few follow-up questions.
Sure.
Specific to Parkinson's. So taste and smell are two important factors with food. With Parkinson's, these senses may be decreased or almost lost. Is there any way to reinforce remaining abilities or have special ingredients, or even just to recover these senses?
So I cannot really speak to how to recover senses, but I do know that for people who have a duller sense of taste or smell, that, you know, adding a lot of flavor. And so that's what I was sort of trying to go for in this, like with, and actually I just realized I also left out one of my spices, which is cumin. When I made the dressing, I should have added a little bit of cumin too. So, you know, if you're finding that food is feeling unappealing, you may need to season it more. So I would say to avoid doing that with salt so much, because, you know, then we're talking about too much sodium in our food, but things like herbs and even some spicy type stuff, so hot sauce or, you know, other spices like cayenne pepper and red chili flakes, and things that are kind of pungent too, so lemon and citrus, all those things kind of wake up the senses a little bit, and maybe can combat that a little bit. So it's more adding more flavor. But, you know, I can't really say for sure how to recover your senses too much.
Okay, thanks. Another question, given your work at Community Servings, have you ever worked with a client living with Parkinson's that needed guidance with constipation, and any success stories or tips that you can share?
Yes, so we serve a fair amount of clients with Parkinson's disease. Our meals are very high in fiber, so I know anecdotally that some of my patients really, especially if they've gone from not having well-prepared meals to, so a lot of the clients that I see have real severe mobility challenges, not just my Parkinson's patients, but also all of our clients. And so they are starting from a place of eating a lot of processed foods or more convenience-based foods, and then suddenly they're going to eating a vegetable at every meal, you know, lots and lots of fresh foods, all whole grains, things like that, a lot of plant-based foods. And so they do really notice a difference in their digestive system, and also just sort of that general feeling of like getting the processed food out of their diet and feeling better. So yes.
Okay, great. And then lastly, you touched on it and gave a tip on how to stay hydrated with the rubber bands. What counts for staying hydrated? Like coffee, tea, to help reach that? And how would a person know their goal of how much they should drink every day?
Okay, so knowing how much to drink can be based on a lot of different things. The primary thing you're basing it on is, you know, how big you are. So like there are a lot of different recommendations out there. Basically, the Institute of Medicine's guideline is for men to drink about 90 ounces of water per day, and for women 90 ounces, and for men about 125 ounces. So, you know, if you sort of think about it in the 6 to 8 cups range, that is usually enough for some people. If you are someone that is doing a lot of exercising, is sweating a lot, or it's sort of a time of year where we're sweating more, you definitely want to add in at least 1 or 2 cups of water. But a good 20% of our water during the day, or our water needs, can also come from foods. So fruits and vegetables are the primary way to get water in through food. But anything that you drink that's liquid, aside from alcohol, is going to count towards your hydration. So your coffee counts, your tea counts, you know, juice counts. I would stay away from soda at all costs. If I had one wish in the world, it would be that. But even, you know, like seltzer, those kinds of things, which are fine, they count. So, you know, a lot of times doctors tell people to, you know, not count their coffee, but the research shows us that the amount of water loss from caffeine does not outweigh the benefits of how much water is in like a coffee or a tea. So I wouldn't advise drinking a whole lot of coffee or tea because you will definitely be going to the bathroom 100 times a day, but it does count.
Oh, that's good news for me. That's good. I drink a lot of tea, so I wasn't sure if that counted or not, but now I know.
Yep, it does.
I'm meeting my goals, so great.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Beth, for doing the cooking demo and letting us see your beautiful kitchen as well.
You're welcome.
We will see you in a little bit for question and answers towards the end of our program.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Now I'm pleased to introduce our 3 panelists here today to share a little bit about themselves and some tips on nutrition and Parkinson's. So first, I'd like to introduce Nick Roberts. Nick, we'll have you share a little bit about yourself and any tips and tricks you want to share about nutrition.
Yeah, mute myself. Okay. Hi, everyone. How are you guys doing? I hope you're smiling. It's a beautiful day today out here in Georgia. I'm sure, hopefully, you are having a beautiful day out wherever you are looking at this presentation. A little bit about me. I was an airline pilot and got diagnosed in 2013. So it's about 7-year itch, I guess, right now. And so after that, you know, everything transitioned into Parkinson's, and I got involved with the public policy and political advocacy team. So advocating for Parkinson's in Washington, D.C. and the local political level. I also been volunteering for a lot of Parkinson's Foundation events. So one of the things I started to go, you know, to take on was with my health, because, you know, when you're an airline, when you're flying for the airlines, you're living on, you know, whatever food you get at whatever time. So what I got involved with was hiking, and hiking was something I started to do when I was, you know, when I was working, because of the you know, the opportunity to travel around the world. So one of those things I got, you know, so when I got Parkinson's, when I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, I started, you know, taking up hiking as an exercise, and that was really great. And so when I started exercising, I also had to change my diet. And when my diet changed, so then you know, when you go hiking, you need to take you know, different type of diet. Basically, you have to make sure that you're hydrated very well. And as you know, the previous dietitian said, you know, a glass of beer or a bottle of beer, a glass of wine or a bottle of beer doesn't count. So you know, also you need to make sure you have enough electrolytes when you're hiking. Now there are a lot of YouTube videos on hiking, so I don't want to bother you with that much. But when you have Parkinson's and when you're hiking, you have to make sure you're having medications, and medications have to be, you know, you have to pretty much boil it down to your on and off times. For those of you who are not familiar with the on and off times, most people with Parkinson's have like the on time, which, you know, you're all getting up and going, and you know, you're Superman at that time. And you're off pretty much. You know, you can't move much, and you know, there's different stages of Parkinson's as where you arrive at. So, well, that's you know, that's what I have for you today.
Great, thanks so much, Nick, for sharing. We'd like to introduce our next panelist. We have Denise Coley with us today. Denise, welcome, and please share a little bit about yourself and any tips that you learned about nutrition.
Thank you, Erin, and good morning, good evening, good night, depending on where you are in the world right now. My name is Denise Coley, and I live in Silicon Valley, and I too am a Parkinson's patient, I was recently diagnosed in 2018 and finally found out why I was having all the symptoms that I was showing for about 10 to 12 years. I decided after a year or two that I wanted to be an activist and advocate for Parkinson. I wanted to make sure that I increased awareness and education and communications to the under-engaged communities and remote global communities. So I immediately signed up to be with the Parkinson's Advocates and Research so that I could work with researchers and find out what's going on with clinical trials. I also joined the foundation's People with Parkinson's Advisory Council, which I'm still a member of. We call it PPAC. And more recently, I joined the World Parkinson Coalition Committee on Global Equity, Access, and Inclusion Working Group. And through that, I started thinking about what kind of lifestyle changes do I need to make being a Parkinson patient. I had done lots of exercise over the last 20 years, but I decided to look at diet. I looked at several different diets, and Mediterranean diet resonated with me because I love fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds. And I typically lean toward fish and chicken, so this was a great opportunity to incorporate that in my diet. And you'll hear from the quarantine chef and how he has incorporated that for the diet for the whole family. The most important thing for me, as Beth and Laura Mishley has said, is the color in the plate. My cardiologist used to always say, you get a fistful of vegetables, or 2 fistfuls of vegetables, a fistful of fruit a day, but make sure it's colorful and arranged on your plate so that it's colorful and you'll eat more. And I find that's so very true. The best story I have around that is I love black-eyed peas, and culturally you always have it at the beginning of the year for good luck. And more recently, a friend introduced me to this wonderful salad. I said I'm going to have it no matter what it is because it's black-eyed peas. So it was a black-eyed pea salad. And we can literally take the items from our garden and put into a salad. So you have black-eyed peas, you have avocado, you have red peppers, you have jalapeno peppers, and you can put all different things in it as well as onions. Next time I'm going to put carrots and seeds in it. And you put a little bit of Italian dressing on it, and it is absolutely flavorful, delicious, and you don't even know that the jalapeno is there. I don't know how that's possible. So that was a great piece for me. Next slide, please. So one of the things I wanted to share in my lifestyle changes is, besides nutrition, there are a couple of elements that I find really helpful. I try to practice mindfulness every day because I want to be centered and be in present. I want to be here all the time. I want to make sure that I'm drinking enough and that I'm exercising enough. So I try to spend 30 minutes to 2 hours most days exercising, because I find if I do 30 minutes, it probably helps a little bit, but if I do an hour, it really hits the spot. And why do I do this? It helps my sleep. I was having horrible problems with insomnia. And if I don't do those 4 elements on the left, my sleep quality is horrific. Constipation rolls in ever so often at the most unexpected times, which is something you don't want to deal with. And each one of those plays an important part to try to lessen that as well. And I find out I have more energy. I have 4 grandkids. So with 4 grandkids, you need energy. And they range in ages from 6 to 11. So being mindful, hydrating, eating well, and exercise is really good. And after I do all these things, I have a tremendous feeling of well-being. So if I look at the change in my life, mindfulness, hydration, nutrition, exercise is so important to be a healthy, quality of life person that I want to be with Parkinson's. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Denise, for sharing. I really like the graphic because I'm a visual learner, so that really helps me see how you've balanced and found a good balance in your life. I'd like to introduce the gentleman sitting next to you, Bernard Coley, AKA the Quarantine Chef. Please share a little bit about yourself, Bernard, and some of the things you've learned about nutrition.
Hello, everyone. I was originally, and still am, a consultant and a kind of retired exec with over 48 years of experience in the high-tech industry. And that didn't prepare me for what I was getting into. So I'm going to transition a little bit. I'm currently a member of the Parkinson's Foundation Advocates and Research Group, PAIRS, And I work with my wife, Denise, here on my left, on an outreach initiative where we're trying to increase awareness of PD and the PD resources in underengaged communities. And most importantly, I am a care partner. Next slide. So you heard earlier, and you've heard from Dr. Mishley and Beth, and now my partner, the benefits of certain nutritional diets. So as a care partner, here's my perspective. My partner says, I need to follow the Mediterranean diet, which is fruits, nuts, vegetables, seeds, more fish and chicken, and eat colorful salads and eat fresh foods and prepare foods in a healthy way. Note the prepare foods in a healthy way, because you'll find out whose job that turned out to be. So here's the reality. COVID-19 quarantining is our new norm. So I needed to modify my role as a PD partner and get on with it. And being a silver lining kind of guy, I looked for what were the opportunities that this presented us. Next slide, please. So as a care partner, obviously under the quarantines, my burden increased. So here's the thing that I advise though. Acknowledge these facts and move on. There is a requirement for increased planning for care partners and for the PD patient as well. Yeah, we have to plan now grocery shopping. We have to really lay out what healthy meals we want and what items we need to pick up from the grocery store, because we can't run to the grocery store every day now to complete Beth salad. We have to get them in advance. And then that brings on something new, which I hadn't paid much attention to prior to this, was managing the food inventory. You don't want your food going bad in the refrigerator, on the shelf. So you can't just go buy. And then you also have to kind of balance it. You have to balance fresh foods with frozen foods, things that can sit around. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of that later. And then we always, of course, had to make sure our technology works so we could be on panels like this and listen in as time went on. Next slide, please. So here was the silver lining. I became the quarantine chef, the guy responsible for all these things you've heard about the last 2 days for our family. And but I looked at it as an opportunity. It was a chance for the food preparation to become a positive distraction from the boredom or the mental health issues of being stuck at home all the time. It was also a chance for the entire family, not just the PD patient, to eat healthier meals. And that's a benefit to everyone. And I can tell you, as the overall feeling in the house is healthier, everybody's doing better, including the PD patient. And as it was a chance to improve my partner's quality of life and also add something to the community. So as the quarantine chef, I publish the meals I make on Facebook every day. And I try to make it a little food preparation log. So if you follow me on Facebook, you'll see some of these healthy meals that were being referred to and there. And I try to have a slide every day or a picture every day, which is the ingredients list, as well as the steps going through the finished meal. And just for those of you who think, oh, this is gonna be boring, I figured out the other day that I've done roughly over 130 unique meals that meet these descriptions since the start of the quarantine. And that's a shock to me because I didn't even know I knew 131 different, but there's plenty of opportunity to find something that will work for you. It's also turned out a great way to connect with the family. People have talked about some of the side effects of Parkinson's disease. So at our dinner table every day, we talk about the meal. And it turns out that this nutritional stuff can be fun and exciting, as I try to make an international dish most days. And we talk about some of the ingredients in the dish. And that's become a wonderful, more than distraction, but an educational thing for the whole family, to the point that we look forward to dinner time to talk about today's nutritional meal. And it's a chance to focus on an important component of my own personal life. As a care partner, I have to stay healthy. And because, you know, a lot of stuff centers around me and getting this done every day. So you care partners out there, this is important too. Your mental health is just as important. Next slide, please. So a couple of quick things that I've researched. So a lot of things you've heard the last day and a half they don't matter unless you implement these in the patient's daily life. So it was really important for me to focus on research which helped implement the things that we've talked about. I also have researched ingredients. Beth just mentioned a minute ago about the loss of taste and things like that. Well, when you deal with food, the rule is this: people first taste food with their eyes, then they taste food with the smell before they actually taste it. So we can deal with the first and the third. We can make your meals attractive, and you can also make them spicy. And I loved it when Beth said that, because it turns out that when you go and pay $40 for a meal at a restaurant, basically you're paying for the same ingredients you could have at home, but they've done a little bit with the spices. And there's a big difference. And you can do that at home. And then the research helped me look into healthy substitutes. One of the favorite meals I prepared around this house is a Colombian empanada. And my grandkids have loved it. They beg for it. My son thinks it's the best meal I've made. But here's the dirty little secret. It's all made with plant-based meat substitutes. I don't bother to tell them it's not hamburger, it's not beef, it's a plant-based substitute. So my grandchildren are eating more vegetables. My PD partner is eating more vegetables. A lot of things are going on around here where they're actually eating more vegetables and enjoying it. So you're not substituting or losing taste because you're using many of these products. Next. All right, I will stop there and so we can head on into questions and not run over.
That's great, Bernard. I am so excited to have you here with us today to share so much of your experience. And we've already gotten some questions on how to follow you. So we will put that information in our chat window so that you will probably get some more followers on Facebook after this. All right, next we're gonna move on to asking some of our panelists some questions as we learned a little bit about your experiences and hobbies. So let's start with Denise. Denise, will you share some of your go-to snack items?
My favorite go-to snack is popcorn. It's portable, the grandkids love it, and you can do it at any point in time. But the most important part is I have lots of vegetables from the garden, and so we can make guacamole, we can make hummus from the chickpeas, garbanzo beans, and dip it with fruits and vegetables, which is a really go-to for everybody, and I love it myself. And you can make different kinds, because some people have onion allergies, some people have allergies, and I like all of them. So I can make one batch for me and a batch for everyone else, which is really great. And I always keep nuts around. I really love almonds with nothing on it whatsoever, and I can find that in a couple of stores. Pumpkin seeds come in second, and then the rest of the nut family. So there are always nuts around. And I also have worked with pickles. I love pickles, and the kids love pickles. So getting a variety of pickles, the kind that can be canned very quickly and easily. So that's a snack that some of the kids will ask for as well. So those are my favorite go-to.
Great, thanks Denise. Bernard, let's learn a little bit about what you keep in stock in your pantry, especially as the quarantine chef.
So one of the things you'll see in the picture there, and because we've been referring to it off and on, is the spice rack. So one of the key things that I keep in stock are the spices. So that the food is tasty, it's exciting, and you can take the same dish and make it 3 or 4 days in a row, but change the spices in it, and you think you've got a different meal. It's been fantastic. So I make sure I stock spices, various healthier pastas, beans, dry goods for the lentils, things for fiber. That's important, and keep those stocked. And as well as canned goods. Canned goods have gotten a poor reputation, but they're in the quarantine, you can't help it. You can do as much fresh as you can, but you also need some things that last. So canned beans especially. We have a lot of canned beans. Now, the other place I want to point to real quick, though, is the countertop. I'll have a slide a little bit later where I talk about storage. how long you can store things. But the countertop is very important because that's where all your fresh stuff is going. Your fresh vegetables, your fruits, and your peppers. So don't just think of the pantry. Think about your countertop. Your countertop should be literally full of fresh items. And I'll share a quick thing with you that I learned in my research. So if you like onions and you buy green onions, I bet you didn't realize that you could put your green onion stalk in a jar of water and keep cutting the top off, and the green onions will keep growing. So you don't have to go back to the grocery store. You can just keep growing your own onions right there. I was surprised. I've had some that have gone 3 months, and I'm still cutting the tops off of it. So there's a quickie for you from some of my research. Then there's obviously the freezer, which we'll come back to in a few minutes. You've got to freeze things. And of course the refrigerator, and keeping your fresh fruits and vegetables in there. Once their countertop life is nearing the end, you can get a few extra days or so by putting them in the refrigerator.
Awesome, very comprehensive. Thank you, Bernard. All right, let's check in with Nick. Nick, you shared that you are out and about hiking. Can you tell us specifically what healthy beverages, snacks you make sure to pack when you're out and about?
Sure. First of all, I'm getting hungry watching, just listening to the quarantine chef. So anyhow, yeah, basically, when you deal with Parkinson's, you have to, your hiking trips have to be, first of all, you need to organize it properly around your medication and the protein intake also. So what I do is I carry, dry fruits or with tangerines or bananas or any other fruit that is like, that I can take on the way, including nuts, just like Denise was saying, but also electrolytes with water, because, your body, for most of us with Parkinson's, we have tremors that goes on not just outside, but also inside. So very often, your body's working much harder, even when you're going on your hikes, basically. So your water, your dehydration process needs electrolytes also. Plus, you have to make sure that you have enough gear to make sure that you have to, use sunblock and just add a few things. Yeah.
Yes, very important to be prepared before you head outdoors with questionable weather and who knows what could come up, but great. Thanks, Nick. And I do understand it is lunchtime here in Minnesota, so seeing all these beautiful pictures from Bernard is also making my stomach growl a little bit. All right, let's go to Denise. As you mentioned, you've started a garden and you're making some homegrown pickles. What do you suggest if we've got extra vegetables from the garden or leftovers? What can we do with them?
Well, to back up a little bit, the garden is really special. This year it was done by the whole family. My son and the kids, they prepped the garden and got the dirt and the rocks and the containers and everything together. And then by the evening, all of us went out and put the vegetables, beginning vegetables into the garden, and where was going to go, what spot, and then patiently waiting for the fruit of our labors. And that has been really fantastic. And as you can tell by the salads here, these are some of the colorful salads that Bernard put together based on it. I've made the pickles. The other thing that I have done, and the kids were talking about it yesterday, is I love tomatoes and I like to eat them as soon as I see them turn. And we have to stop because I haven't done any fried green tomatoes. We haven't done any stewed tomatoes. And last night the request was, can't you make tomato juice? And so we'll have to do tomato juice. But the pickles are a thing that can last a little bit longer. I have done the whole process where you cook them and then put them in the jar and they last for a long period of time. But more recently, I've gotten into the quick version where you make them and you can put it in overnight. After overnight, they're ready and they last up to a month. And you can do different flavors. And so I like curry pickles, so I do a lot of curry pickles. And the kids look forward to seeing what is going to be done. But tomatoes are my favorite of the garden. And we do use herbs. So Bernard has been drying the herbs as well so that we can use them for future. I'm trying to figure out whether or not we're going to do something with drying the jalapenos, but I think I've been eating them more quickly than we can dry them. So there are so many different ways to do it. And then zucchini, we have lots of zucchini. We've been giving it out to some of the family and friends. And my daughter likes zucchini bread. So I've never made zucchini bread ever. So I might make some zucchini bread as well. But it's wonderful. You're hungry, you just go out to the backyard and figure out what you're hungry for and just have some. And cucumbers with a little bit of vinegar are terrific for a snack as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Bernard, I heard you recently learned some freezer and fridge safety. Would you care to share a little bit about what you learned?
Yes. So an important thing here. So we're the COVID-19 is forcing us to stockpile. So as part of stockpiling, things like your freezer become very important. So we recently, though, got a reminder as to why you have to diversify your food. Our freezer decided to quit. And so without warning, all of a sudden, I opened the freezer one morning and all the food was stalled. It was a disaster, I thought. All of that food, all of that investment in the food inventory now was in jeopardy. So I quickly did some research at the USDA Food Safety and Inspection website and several others to learn as much as I could about food safety. And so I'm going to share just a couple of things with you. And by the way, these slides are going to be available, so don't try to write all this down. And I've got an additional slide that'll go with this. But the key is, remember these two rules: 40 degrees in 2 hours. So the first thing is, it's a myth that you cannot refreeze thawed food. However, you do have to look at some things on a case-by-case basis, and you do have to remember this rule. Once food has been at 40 degrees for 2 hours, that's it. You cannot refreeze it. So if you get it and it's got crystals, if you get it and look at the food and it's not really completely thawed out, you can probably refreeze them. But you have to look at the various things and be careful. There are a couple of things that modify that rule. And that is, one, do not refreeze your leftovers. So if you've been making food in advance, as many of us have advised, you make a lot on Sunday or Monday and then you put it in the freezer. Unfortunately, if you've made it and it falls in the category of leftovers and it thaws, your only real safe choice is to put it in the refrigerator and make it within 48 hours. Use it within 48 hours. So I had a quick menu change when the freezer happened, because the next couple of days was all about trying to use as much of the food as I could that had thawed out. So 40 degrees, 2 hours is your marker. Under that, you can probably refreeze. Over that, you cannot. You're going to have to use it very quickly. One more thing. The reason I also tell you it's on a case-by-case basis is because although you can refreeze some foods, they won't taste as well. Some of them will be okay, but others will not taste as well. So you probably don't want to refreeze it. Hey, so my starting point, it's simple. Nobody's going to pull out a thermometer and touch the food. So here's a simple way the quarantine chef would translate that. And this is not an official recommendation. It's just sort of what I live by. If the food is warm, it goes. Get rid of it. If it's, very cool, it goes in the refrigerator and I prep it within 2 to 3 days. If it's cold, it goes back in the deep freezer as quickly as possible, which only works if your freezer is repaired, right? So obviously, most of your food is going to have to get prepared within the next couple of days, or it's going to have to be discarded. Next slide. Okay, one other quick thing I wanted to throw in here. I'll only spend a second or two on it. This is a question I researched early on in the process because I heard so many different things about the food. And as I mentioned, we use the counter a lot. And there's all kinds of debates about, how long food lasts. Some foods I found out shouldn't be put in the refrigerator when you come home from the grocery store. And most of us are automatic. We come home from the grocery store, we throw our fresh produce right in the refrigerator. Well, it turns out that shortens the shelf life. So here's a quick chart for you that's been put together from the food chef, and giving you some parameters for storing food, how long they'll last, and that'll help you in your food planning to help out. Like avocados, 4 to 7 days, or oranges can go 3 weeks in the refrigerator. And for some of these, I use a combination. They start off on the counter, and then as they start to wilt a little, they go in the freezer. All right, I'll wrap up that there.
All right, great, Bernard. Thank you so much. You have a wealth of information. All right, we're going to move to Nick now for our last panelist-specific question, and we'll take some questions from our live audience today. Nick, just share a little more about what works for you every day. I see that in this picture you've got this massive mushroom. Did you happen to pick that by chance?
I was thinking of picking it for the quarantine chef. Still a big mushroom. No, actually, when I went out hiking one evening, we just came across this huge thing, and that's my hand on the side to show you how big that mushroom was. So, but anyhow, for my regular nutrition, day-to-day nutrition, what I do is, I'm from Southeast Asia, so most of the foods that you get out there is lots of curries and turmeric and lots of spices and all that stuff. So, I still prepare Southeast Asian dishes. For taste, I guess, as Denise was saying, that she eats a lot of pickles. So, I also use a lot of pickles. So, I guess, my taste buds are good so far, thank God. So, nutrition basically, I don't really have a specific food that I avoid or eat around. I just try to eat things in moderation. Also, if we go back to what I want to say is that each of us Parkinson's patients, there's one cliche that I heard when I got Parkinson's, that if you meet one patient, you just met one person. So each one is different and unique. So my thing is that if you have certain foods or certain exercises or something that you like doing, is to just do that. I know a lot of us do long hikes, and some of us run marathons and competing in Ninja Warrior events. But if you cannot do that, just even if you have to take a walk out in the garden or do some gardening or open the blinds to get some sun in, that's good enough. Just within whatever your capacity, just do that. But you need to move, you need to exercise. Exercise is the only medication I know that works. Anything else is like, is basically you're adding medications and adding stuff to your thing. So, but the other thing is that, your health, you need to take care of it. And initially when I said, I was an airline captain, basically all of us are captains of our health and our lives. So we need to take control of, sit in that cockpit with me and take control of of your health. And, that's the main goal for each one of us, that we have to, that we have it in our capacity to take control of, take control of our health at any given point. So, and it's very important, people with Parkinson's, you need to take control of your health, and, you'll be able to live a much easier life like that. For me, hiking is basically meditative also, because it gives, as the quarantine chef was saying, that when he cooks, it provides a distraction from what you're going through. So for me, hiking is one of those things that provides the distraction. When I'm hiking, I don't really think about Parkinson's. I'm only thinking about just getting to certain spots, So that's something that you can achieve. Each one of us has that capacity to achieve.
Wow, thank you so much, Nick. Thank you all of you for answering these questions. Now we'll bring in Beth to join the panel as we take questions from attendees today. I just want to say thank you so much, and I'm so glad this is recorded so that we can spread some of your inspiration and some of your own experiences to people with this video. So I'll wait for a moment to stop sharing our slides and bring the whole gang back together. There we are. All right. So we've got some good questions coming from our attendees today. So first I'll ask Beth this question.
Sure.
Please address Parkinson's and diabetes. For example, one person wrote in that they struggle with what to have for snacks. They love popcorn, but it's a carb. Beans are great for fiber and adding veggies and protein, but they shoot up my blood sugar a lot. We have to watch proteins with medications and have a protein or fat with every carb.
So that's a great question, and it's unfortunately doesn't have a great, easy, straightforward answer. And what works for one person is not going to work for other. I mean, ideally, beans are a great food for managing blood sugar, but it sounds like this person's blood sugar does go up from eating too many beans. So, you know, I don't have like a really solid, great answer because it is really complicated. My best advice is to really work with a dietitian one-on-one to make a really good, solid plan because I can't really give like a blanket statement for what's going to work for one person. But, you know, fiber and things that will delay the emptying of your stomach, so protein, fats, those delay food from, you know, going from your stomach to the next part of your digestive system, which is, you know, your small intestines. So because of that, it delays the blood sugar spike. So, you know, the longer it takes for something to get through your digestive system, the slower the blood sugar spike. So that's why in theory, beans and, you know, pairing proteins and fats with your carbs should delay that. And certainly if you have a slower moving digestive system, that should also delay that, but it also makes your blood sugar that much harder to manage. So I would, my best advice is to try to work one-on-one with a dietitian in your area to get really personalized advice.
Okay, and does that usually take a doctor referral to get an appointment?
It depends on where you live and what type of insurance you have. Most insurance will cover, you know, visits with a dietitian if you have a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, so that shouldn't be a problem. So, you know, if you're looking, your physician might be a good place to start though in terms of how to find an appropriate dietitian.
Great. All right, one more question for you. Speaking about the hydration, is it okay to drink 1 to 2 cups of caffeinated coffee per day?
Yeah, especially if it doesn't bother you, like it doesn't make you jittery or anything like that, then yes, absolutely 1 to 2 cups of coffee. And, you know, the research on coffee goes both ways all the time. And I actually wanted to bring that up too because Dr. Mishley mentioned that yesterday that, you know, nutrition research is really complicated and hard to do because our data is reliant on people telling us. So the same goes with coffee. And so a lot of times we hear, you know, coffee is great, coffee is terrible, or, you know, things like that. But 1 to 2 cups of coffee is not a lot of coffee, and that's completely fine as long as it's not affecting your sleep or your, you know, your jitteriness or anything like that.
Okay. Now for the person with Parkinson's perspective, Denise or Nick, have you had any negative effects that caffeine affected your Parkinson's symptoms? Go ahead, Denise, if you want to share.
No, I haven't had any negative effects of caffeine because I love tea. So I've been drinking tea before, during, and after.
Okay. How about for you, Nick?
Coffee is, you know, it's funny because I used to drink a lot of coffee when I used to work. And basically when I first started getting the tremor in my hand, I actually thought I was drinking a lot of coffee. So I stopped, just slowed down my coffee and stopped drinking coffee, but you know, the tremor continued. But I noticed that coffee actually aggravates the tremors. But
Okay.
Tea I can, you know, tea is not a problem, yeah, for some reason.
Okay. Found something that worked well.
Yeah.
All right. So also thinking about that hydration, just curious on what techniques you use to get your water in every day. Bernard, do you want to share?
So one of the things that I've gone to doing around here is making spa water, big batches of spa water. And what I mean by that is I take water and I add things to it. So we have cucumber, we have mint, we have cucumber and mint, we have fruit-infused waters. And that encourages the whole family because the water tastes good. And so we end up consuming a lot more water over the day because they don't think of it as quite drinking water. They think of it as drinking something that tastes good. And that's encouraged and helped with the hydration challenges.
Great. Anyone else want to share what they do for their water intake?
Well, I always have my bottle of water with me. And if I'm exercising, I always make sure I have electrolytes in the water or pH, alkaline and electrolytes. But normally I'll just have a regular water. And my water always has to be ice cold, which is atypical because you're supposed to have it keeping it room temperature for yin and yang. But I like my ice cold, otherwise I don't cool it down.
Okay.
I start off my morning usually with hot water and fresh lime. I squeeze fresh lime and hot water in the morning, and I add some honey in it, and it helps with the with the bowel movements. Yeah.
Good tip. We did have a question come in. Exactly what are the electrolytes that you are adding to your water, or a beverage that has electrolytes in it that you like?
Because it has electrolytes in it. But I just get smart water or something that's labeled that has electrolytes in it. I don't add anything at all to it.
Okay.
I just use liquid IV.
Oh.
Yeah, it's pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. Beth, do you have any tips or tricks with electrolytes?
I mean, in general, like if you're eating, foods with sodium, the electrolytes that are usually in there are sodium and potassium. And the issue is if you're doing like a really long amount of exercise and sweating, not only are you losing water from your body, but you're losing the sodium and potassium. So that's what Gatorade is designed to do. It puts those things back in there. So in general, I don't recommend that that's a necessary thing. If you like it and it makes you feel good and you feel like it's benefiting you, then it's certainly not harmful. But a lot of times people drink a lot of sports drinks like Gatorade and things like that that are also loaded with sugar. So the smart water and that liquid IV are of course not loaded with sugar, so they're perfectly fine. And it's a great insurance policy to make sure that you're not losing your electrolytes. But I generally, unless someone's like running super long distances or sweating for hours on end, it's not completely necessary.
Okay.
I agree with Beth. I don't do it regularly unless I'm hiking long distance.
Yeah. Then you probably do need it.
Good. All right, another question for you, Beth.
Sure.
Is it okay to eat canned foods such as canned sardines, salmon, or beans if a non-BPA liner is used in cans? And what about homegrown or home processed cans and frozen vegetables?
So yeah, there was a slide yesterday that I found really interesting from Dr. Mishley's data that said that, progression of disease was more strongly associated with people eating more canned fruits and vegetables, but it also was correlated with frozen fruits and vegetables. And I can't really figure out why. And a lot of times we see correlation, but we don't see causation. So I think however you can get the most nutrition into your body, whether that's fresh fruits and vegetables that you can, or you eat fresh, or that you buy frozen or canned vegetables, the better. So yeah, I mean, I think buying things that are BPA free are probably safer and definitely better for everyone. A lot of times now vegetables come in those cardboard like Tetra packs now too. So those are even more safe because there's not metal on the inside of there. And just make sure that you're buying low sodium products and rinsing the sodium off there. Sardines are a super healthy food, so I definitely say go for the sardines. It's a sustainable food with lots of healthy fats. They're inexpensive. You can keep them on hand. There's tons of things you can do with them, and just watch the sodium. So yeah, I say good.
Great. And just a little follow-up about Dr. Mishley's presentation yesterday. She did mention that pasta was on the list of things to avoid. Are there certain types of pastas that are more acceptable or compared to others?
So that's also another good question too. You know, it's all to do with like, you know, certain foods are sort of associated with poor diets. So for example, someone who eats a lot of pasta might not also be eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. If they're just eating, you know, pasta with some jarred sauce, which is loaded with salt, loaded with sugar and all kinds of things. So even though it's not necessarily the pasta causing something, it's more like in conjunction with everything else going on in that person's diet. That being said, there are definitely versions of pasta that are healthier than others. So whole grain pasta is definitely preferable than to white pasta, especially from a blood sugar spiking perspective. There's more fiber in there too. There's a zillion different types of pasta out there now on the market. There's chickpea pasta and quinoa pasta and all kinds of different, you know, brown rice pasta. So some of those, I haven't like looked at them all super carefully. Sometimes I like to buy the chickpea pasta. I think it tastes pretty good and it definitely adds protein and fiber. It has, because it has so much fiber in it, it sort of drops the amount of net carbs in there. And so what you want to make sure is not just watching, you know, how much pasta you eat, but what else you're eating with it too. So, you know, every night a big bowl of plain pasta is not a great way to go. But if you're eating a serving of pasta and it's loaded with vegetables and all kinds of healthy proteins and things like that, then it's not a problem, I think. And you're going to be too full to eat too much pasta if you have all that fiber and good fruits and vegetables going with your pasta too.
Bernard, do you have a comment or something to add, as I saw you giving lots of thumbs up?
Well, that for me is the thing. You need a balanced diet, and a lot of where the negative stuff comes in, my research has shown, has been the additives. It's the things that we throw in, and so a little research will show you that there are lots of substitutes you could use, which are way healthier. So you can have I'll give you a big one: shepherd's pie. Shepherd's pie is a comfort food that's big in England and in the surrounds, and it's got a mashed potato topping. Well, if you have shepherd's pie, it's also loaded with veggies, and you can reduce the meat and fill in with veggies. In addition, reduce some of the butter. And that same shepherd pie that someone else is eating that's loaded with bad stuff, the sauces full of sugars, things like that, is not the version that you're having. And I can tell you that you can make it, and it can be very, very tasty, but you can make it in a healthy way. So, commenting on what Beth is saying, you can have a lot of these and have a balanced diet, but just start substituting out some of the unhealthy additives or additions that you put in. That cause the dish itself to become less healthy.
I think that's a key takeaway of the substitution. Going back to your salad of the things that you can use on hand or substitute, the one that you did today, Beth. And I do have a follow-up question about the salad. Was there a specific amount of protein that that was in that salad, the couscous salad today?
Yes, I can give you actually the nutritionals on that. So it has 12 grams of protein. So that huge salad made 6 servings. So even, I think you could probably get more than that, but for a 1/6 of that recipe, there were 12 grams of protein, 18 grams of fiber, and it had 57 grams of carbs, but with 8 grams of fiber, that really drops that down. And it only had about 160 milligrams of sodium. So that was definitely a nutrition powerhouse. It does have more calories than your traditional salad because it has so many other things in it. But as a meal, it's like a within totally the appropriate amount of calories that you would have for a meal.
Great, thank you. Another question about fiber. Are there drinks with fiber or ways to incorporate fiber into a smoothie if swallowing is an issue?
Absolutely. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with bumping up your fiber by taking like a psyllium husk supplement. So doctors, it's very safe. It's very effective. So if you do feel like you need some more fiber and getting in enough of that, if you're eating a lot of fibrous food, you are chewing. So adding it in either to a smoothie, in general, a smoothie is going to have a fair amount of fiber, especially if you add greens and a banana and some other type of fruit. Berries are super, super high in fiber. So that's a great fruit to add to a smoothie, but those will add up. But absolutely, the traditional Metamucil or another psyllium husk fiber supplement is completely safe and can be really helpful.
Thanks. And I know the Coleys started our meeting this morning, finishing up their breakfast smoothies.
Yes.
Yes. And what were your ingredients there today?
So today's was mostly a fruit-based smoothie. It was blueberries, strawberries, watermelon. And by the way, watermelon, you follow my thing. Watermelon is a great place to get lots of hydration. So I use watermelons in a lot of things, especially on salads. So that, as an aside, watermelon was in it. There was a little yogurt, a little tea, okay, a little mango, and I'm trying to remember what else I had in. Oh, and honey, a little honey. That the kids love it when I make it that way. I usually add celery and carrots as well to my smoothies. I did this morning because I ran out of time, but I usually do that. And we've also had it with kale.
Nice. Beth, another question. Are green drinks considered healthy? I'm guessing that must be the person who wrote it thinking about the spinach drinks or maybe the pre-bottled green drinks.
Yeah, so if you are, so smoothies get like this beautiful health halo, like I made a smoothie and it's healthy, but there's all versions of smoothies. So yeah, so making a green smoothie at home that's not loaded with way too much sugar or, way too much fruit, because if you eat, if you make a smoothie and you put a whole banana and a cup of blueberries and a cup of strawberries and, all that thing, you would not really ever sit down and eat all that much fruit. It's going to add up to a lot of added sugar. And even though it's the good kind of sugar, it's still sugar and it's going to have a lot of calories. So there's all great recipes out there for some green smoothies that are, lower in calories. And also the amount that you're drinking too. So a lot of those, like I know those bottled smoothies that you can get at Whole Foods, they're great, but it's a lot of fruit packed into there again. So it might say no added sugar, but if you actually look at the amount of sugar in there, because of all the fruit, it's going to have like 40 grams of sugar, which I don't want to say this, but there's 40 grams of sugar in a Coke too. So of course, the Coke has no nutrition and the smoothie has lots of nutrition, so they're not comparable. But if you're just thinking like sugar to sugar, that's a lot of sugar. So I would just be careful about what you're putting into the smoothie and how much of it you're having. So, like a 30-ounce smoothie is not a serving size. It should be more like 8 to 12 ounces.
Okay. All right. I got a question for the panel. Yesterday, it was recommended to avoid dairy, which surprised many people. What do you think? Or is that something that you are conscious about? Nick, I know you were connecting by phone. Are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay. Do you have a comment about the dairy?
Yeah, I have lactose. I'm lactose intolerant, so I have to, I can't take and do any dairy products.
So you're not worried about dairy anyways. All right. So how about you, Denise?
I don't crave dairy products, but periodically I would like to have something. So I figure if I have a cheat day every now and then, that's all right. But I don't try to do that on a regular basis. I try to stay basically with water and juice and tea. But occasionally I might want to have yogurt or I might want to have ice cream, but it's not a daily or weekly thing.
Nice. Great, Beth. Question about vegetables. Are frozen vegetables recommended if fresh are not available, or should only fresh vegetables be used?
So despite what that graph showed yesterday, frozen vegetables are just as healthy as fresh vegetables. So I'm not exactly sure why the data shows that it's more correlated with disease progression. And I have a feeling that it's more just related to something else that's happening in someone's diet. But yeah, frozen vegetables, because what happens is they're picked and they're frozen fairly close to where they are picked. So they're going to retain a lot of their their vitamins and minerals, sometimes more so than, you know, if I live in Boston, if I'm eating kale that was grown in California in the middle of the winter, it had to get all the way to me. And so it's going to lose a lot of its nutritional value, as opposed to if it was frozen and it keeps all those nutrients in that state, then I'm possibly getting even more benefits. On top of that, especially during this time of the pandemic where you can store things and not worry about food going bad. And I'm also really sort of kind of on this kick of trying to get people to waste less food. So a lot of times people buy way too much greens or, you know, things like that go bad so quickly. And if you buy it frozen, that's a non-issue. So especially for people making smoothies too, you know, if you are making a green smoothie and you have to prep that kale, it may be a deterrent for you to eat the vegetable. Whereas if you're making a smoothie and all you have to do is reach into a bag of frozen spinach and throw it in your blender, then you're probably more likely to do it. So I think from a nutrition perspective, from a less food waste perspective, and from a money saving perspective, they're all green lights for me.
Okay. Do you lose any nutrients in the frozen vegetable when you microwave it, or any other ways of preparing it?
Yeah, so any of the water soluble vitamins, so those are B vitamins and vitamin C, will leach out into the water. So you don't want to boil greens or broccoli or things like that for a long time. Steaming vegetables will keep that from happening. Roasting is another great way to keep that from happening. I have been told that microwaves kind of destroy some of the B vitamins, but again, it's preferable for you to eat the healthier foods in a way that's more convenient for you to prep them than to focus too much on, like, you know, and to not eat the vegetables because you don't want to microwave them. Certainly it's better to eat them than to not if you're worried about the microwave. It's not going to destroy all the nutrients.
Okay. One more for you, Beth. Is coconut cream or coconut milk beneficial or cautionary?
Well, the data on that is super mixed. So, you know, somehow coconut oil got this big like health kick. A lot of it was stemming, I think, from people trying to avoid dairy, a lot of people doing like a paleo diet. And, you know, the research, at least coming from like the American Heart Association, is more leaning toward the fact that it's a saturated fat and we want to try to avoid saturated fats. So I think some coconut oil or coconut milk and things like that is absolutely fine. It's where we don't mix up our, you know, variety is key. So if you're only cooking with coconut oil and then you're missing out on what benefits you might get from olive oil, then, you know, that's not necessarily a good thing. So the data is mixed. I'm not going to say don't use coconut oil or coconut milk and things like that. But I wouldn't say it's a complete green light either, just from what we know. And just to reiterate too, like, of course the research is mixed because it's so complicated to do that.
Understand.
So Beth,
Yeah.
let me share one thing I've learned from the research, especially in the United States. There's a lot of lobbying going on by various groups, which impacts some of the research. So my advice would be to check with your dietitian, your nutritionist, people who take the time to go beyond the marketing. You mentioned coconut oil, that was a good example. So you can't just go to a site and go, oh, this thing is healthy, because a lot of it, again, I found was influenced by lobbying groups, by agricultural groups, by trying to move product. So your best bet is to go past them to people who study this for a living, the educational sites, the sites where there's less political influence going on to impact what gets reported or how it gets reported.
Absolutely. And also I'll add to that as well. There are a lot of sites out there that are basing their nutritional advice on sort of just one or two studies, and they're not necessarily good studies. So, you know, it's very easy to Google something or watch an episode of Dr. Oz that's based on one study and kind of run with it. And just like Bernard said, like, go to the Harvard School of Public Health or the USDA, possibly even, you know, the political influence is definitely real, but at least like the science is much more basic. Also, the American Diabetes Association, the American Heart Association, they have really great information that's much more the sort of mainstream or middle of the road, that's not so extreme. There are a lot of people out there sort of posing as nutrition experts who really aren't, and they're really basing information on stuff that's not completely valid or is based on one small study. So I would definitely, check with your doctor, check with a dietitian, go to some really reputable education resources, and just be careful of what you read on the internet.
Thank you. All right, this has been a great program today. We have about 2 minutes, 1 minute left. So I want to do a quick rapid question for all of you. Your favorite healthy dessert? I'll start with Nick.
Creme brulee.
Say that again.
Creme brulee.
Creme brulee. Is that healthy?
Yes. For me.
Yes, it is in your book. Okay. All right, go ahead, Bernard. Favorite healthy dessert?
I don't have a favorite healthy dessert. So what I do is I limit my desserts to periodically, and when I do, I go overboard because it helps my mental health.
Moderation, I love it.
Oh yeah.
Denise.
I don't have a favorite health. Well, I do have a healthy one. My healthy one is just to cut up fruit and make that my healthy dessert. Occasionally, I do like to have a certain type of ice cream or a pound cake or something like that, but I usually make a whole thing and then I only eat one slice.
Okay.
So
Everybody shares.
So my healthy before I go to bed, like I guess kind of a dessert is I like to take a spoonful of peanut butter and then put a few little chocolate chips on there. So it's got some healthy fats and a little protein for before I go to bed, and then just enough sweetness. And but I too like a real dessert. So I'd rather have something really good and have it less frequently than like something posing as dessert and have it more often.
I love it. Thank you all so much for joining us today. That concludes our program. I just want to again thank all of you for joining us today, and a special thanks to our silver level sponsor, Kiowa Karen, for making today's program possible. And after today's program, you'll receive a short survey by email. Please take a minute to complete this survey. We really love to know what you thought and what else you'd like to learn about. We will also be sharing a recording of today's session once it's available. To learn more about our resources and our upcoming virtual events, please visit our website at parkinson.org or call our helpline at 1-800-4PD-INFO. Thank you again for joining us today. Stay safe and healthy.